ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker for the day is going to be Lee Havis. Lee Havis is an executive director of International Montessori Society. He also serves on the board of directors of International Montessori Accreditation Council and co-director teaching. In addition, he is executive director, founder and a member of the board of trustee of International Montessori Trust, which supports individualized in-home learning as trust. Let's go ahead and welcome him on board.
Hello, I am Lee Havis, Director of International Montessori Society. Welcome to my presentation on scientific education. The question you first are going to ask is, what is scientific education and why should you care? Well, at the end of the presentation, I think you'll be able to answer that question, both of those questions pretty well for yourself. But let me say first that scientific education is a search for man's true nature. Why you should care is that actually through scientific education, man's true nature was discovered. We know what man's true nature is, and it's not the nature that we see ordinarily around us in the world. As a matter of fact, it's magnificent. It's orderly, it's peaceful, it's really perfect. What a world it would be if we had that true nature in the world. The work that I've done is a continuation of scientific education that has gone on for quite a while. And I can't, in the time period that we have here, give you the 40 years of experience, but at my website, you will be able to find out more about the discoveries and the insights that I've come up with. Actually, well, the website there is indicated on the screen, imsmontessori.org. At that website, you can find resources like a recently revised and updated study guide on the technology. I've developed a technology for scientific education. And that's available along with resources like webinars and an audio CD I've done on the subject. I have a distance learning course and other resources also. I'm coming up with a comprehensive text on the subject of this technology of scientific education. So the information is available, and this is just a beginning, a kind of an overview. Scientific education really began in the 1800s with two French physicians, Itard and Seguin, who experimented with observing children in a natural setting as much as they could develop, studying through observation and freedom what their behavior was like. Nothing much came of that really until another Italian physician, this one Italian, Dr. Maria Montessori, picked up that idea of scientific education and applied it with preschool children. She didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but amazing discoveries came about from that. She discovered that the young child had an incredible receptivity to the environment. Actually, the uniqueness of the environment is the whole key to the discoveries that she made. The children concentrated on these materials that were provided in the environment, and she noticed a profound change in the child's behavior. It changed from the ordinary way of fantasy, inattention, and disorder to one of spontaneous self-discipline, qualities that she saw that were amazing and really unusual. And it came about naturally through freedom. So she realized that what she had discovered with this peaceful, harmonious way of being that she observed was a transformation to the child's true nature. But the key is, and was at the time, what is the environment? How do we bring about this true nature? Well, we know it's freedom, but really at the time, scientific education was just a general sense of giving freedom. And it really was in the mist and clouds. And it has been until I came along with the discoveries and insights that I came up with. But how to create the scientific environment has been the problem. In a general way, it was developed through Dr. Montessori's work, and we know about Dr. Montessori's method, which was applying what she understood of scientific education. I came into the situation in the early 1970s, first as a teacher of young children, then ultimately becoming a director of a training program in Montessori education, and actually developing a curriculum and being very involved. I made an incredible discovery in 1979 that really changed my life and changed the fabric of scientific education. In 1979, I left that prior work in the field of Montessori education and started the International Montessori Society. My discovery was the secret of scientific education as being an individual child framework. What allows this scientific environment to emerge, or how you create it, is the way you look at a child. We have to train our minds to look at the child as an unknown spiritual being. Actually, when we look at a child, we're looking at a cluster of energy. We're not seeing the child's true nature. What we're seeing is the physical objects, the other children, and the adult personality, which is around the hub child. The hub child is what I call the focus of attention, the unknown spiritual being that is the center of this framework. So we're looking in a very unusual way at the child, and the scientific environment that we're going to create is really an order of laws of nature. This is the scientific environment. The question is how to bring it about, and that is what scientific education aims to do. Now, you can do it accidentally, you can do it by instinct, but that's not a reliable way to create this environment. I have discovered through the individual child framework that you can create this environment in a scientific way by removing the disorder from around that hub child. Remove the disorder from the physical objects, the other children, and the adult personality. And what is left when that disorder is removed is the order of laws of nature. How to do that is an experimental process. You have to interact with the physical objects, for example, by trying out different things. I discovered after 1979 that the practical problems were how to conduct those experiments in a systematic, reliable way. And in 2003, after many workshops and much further research, I consolidated a technology, basically a guidance and set of tools to conduct these experiments in a way that was never possible before. So this becomes very practical now. This isn't just a matter of guesswork or instinct or intuition. This is something that somebody can learn. You can learn it and put it into practice, and you can see for yourself the child's true nature emerging. Now let's practice a little bit the idea of looking at the child as a cluster of energy. instead of the way we ordinarily look at the child. Here is the child, but what we're really looking at is the child's physical body. What we're thinking of the child is really a projection of our own personality. Now we see the physical objects. We know that our personality is in the environment around the child. We don't see other children. But here's another example of a scenario. Now here we see a child. The hub child is on the right, working with the physical objects. The other child now we see in the situation, and notice that she's looking at you or me. She's looking at the camera, and that is eye contact. That shows the influence and the impact of the adult personality. So we see ourselves through children in this way. Eye contact, incidentally, is one of the important techniques of the technology. So we see the hub child, we see other children, we see physical objects, and we're learning to see our adult personality. But our adult personality is not who we are. It is not our being. In scientific education, we are being committed to laws of nature. And so we have to learn to separate ourselves from this personality, this quality that we have acquired as a self-image from our conditioning when we were little children. It also is conditioned through the culture. But the technology that I've developed is summarized here as 10 techniques, which are things to do, 20 protocols, which are regulating mechanisms for the techniques, ways to combine them together as experimental interactions is what I call lesson presentations. And then there are a series of safe words which control the language that you use with children. So all of those taken together in different ways and combinations is really what scientific education is about basically in this modern expression of this field. Now, things get a little more complicated when we have a group of children because we have all these different scenarios, all these different clusters of energy. Every child is a hub child of a scenario, or perhaps another child of another scenario. But we don't pay attention, or we don't get ourselves involved with orderly situations. We concern ourselves when there is disorder. So notice the teacher is out of the way of the children's activity. That's the best way to be when there is no problem going on. So when there is a group of children, we have a protocol, well-being of the total environment. And that points us to which scenario we're going to give our priority attention to. We're looking at where there is significant violence or harm coming to a child. For example, that would be a first priority. So we give our attention to a scenario that has that level of harm. And there are lower levels of disorder also. But the concern is the most serious one that we approach first, where there is harm to a child, for example. And we deal with each scenario in the classroom one at a time. Now, we have to be very careful when we're interacting with a scenario because other things are going on. But let's look at this one scenario as a misbehavior scenario. Remember, we're looking at a cluster of energy. So let's look at it like a hurricane. We see the disorder, but we have to analyze it. We have to break it down. So we see the hub child as the eye of the hurricane. We don't do anything with the central hub child. We look around the child and look at the disorder. Now we're going to remove the disorder sequentially, but we have to start with what is most significant in the disorder. It may be in the physical objects, it may be in other children, it may be in the adult personality, maybe all three together, but we have to focus on the most significant one first, because we can't deal with them all at the same time. So the present moment becomes very important because we are constantly seeing changes in the environment. Everything we do brings about some change. So let's take three techniques: proximity, distraction, and clear direction, and see how they might apply in a misbehavior scenario. Look at proximity. You simply move closer to the problem. That's what proximity is. If you move too close, you interrupt the order, and your personality becomes detrimental. And so you can move away. That is a way to use proximity in reverse. If the child does not pay attention when you move close, you may have to use a technique called distraction, which is getting the child's attention. For example, holding an object or touching an object that has the child's attention at that time. When you get the child's attention, you take your hand off the object and then communicate or do whatever is necessary at that point. For example, give a clear direction. A clear direction is simply telling the child to do something. A safe word phrase to use in clear direction would be, for example, come over here, let me show you something. To practice this concept of interacting with children, scientific teaching, look at a protocol called eye contact before talking. That is, don't talk to a child until and unless you have eye contact. A very common mistake that many adults make with children is to talk to a child when you don't have the child's attention. Eye contact is the best evidence that you have the child's attention. Now, if you just practiced this one technique, this one protocol, if you're violating the protocol, especially, you're going to see big positive changes occur in your relationship with the child. The child is going to pay attention to you, is going to more likely do what you tell the child to do. Now, when you do have eye contact, don't use that as with a facial expression of fear or sadness or some sort of manipulation. Just keep a neutral expression on your face and go from there. Now, the problem that we have is that our personality is conditioned from our childhood to act in ways that are consistent with a very detrimental, harmful condition in the world. It's like fish in water. Water is a condition or a reality that controls the very life of fish. Now, in the same way, we have a reality like personality developed in our childhood or culture, what is around us, that controls our behavior. So we are swimming in this conventional reality without realizing it, just like fish. We have to step out of that condition, out of that reality, and create a new reality. This new reality is the scientific environment. Now, let's look at how a human reality comes about. The young child, we know, has experiences and is going to develop his personality or his stable way of being, his conventional reality, by about the age of 6. He does it by having experiences in the environment. He interacts with adults and physical objects and other children in ways that are habitual, that are repeated, And out of the habit of repeating types of experiences, it becomes a built-in reality. Now, we're going to create in scientific education a new reality, but this reality is different than our personality or culture. It is a reality that we have to create consciously by following laws of nature. We're going to create this commitment to laws of nature. And it's different than our conventional reality. So that's what the technology is for. We're going to remove the disorder from around the hub child in a particular scenario, and there are different scenarios when they come up. We now have a technology of scientific education to conduct our experiments that will remove the disorder in a very effective way. Now, applying the technology is creating this scientific environment in the same way that we unconsciously created our conventional reality when we were little children. We have an experience. We practice a particular type of interaction using the technology one time. Now we have to keep doing it. We have to keep practicing the technology. And that's a big failure area. That's where the problem comes up, because you don't see with one experience, you don't see the full impact of what we're aiming for. You have to keep doing it. And as you keep doing it, you will see the reality of the scientific environment coming forward. It will actually emerge, and you'll see the evidence of it in the child's behavior. The child will come into that condition that Dr. Montessori discovered with her first experience in 1907. Now we see examples of this scientific education in many cultures. It's not dependent on your particular situation in the physical. So here we have Brunei, the teacher observing, and we see physical objects, other children, and of course the adult personality. Here's a situation in Malaysia. Here's a situation in the United States. And here is a situation which is a bit unusual, working with children in the street. You can create the scientific environment by in a unique way by developing the conditions of laws of nature without the usual, the customary framework. The framework is created in this situation by what I call an exchange of value. You can't manipulate the children. You have to get their agreement. They want money, and you have to respond to that. You will give them money if they give you time. So the integrity of the situation is built around what I call an exchange of value. So you're going to use the time with these children to conduct a little bit of some academic exercise. Now, doing this one time is not going to bring about a fundamental change in these children. But imagine doing it day after day after day. This would transform the world. As a matter of fact, I believe that this is the key to transforming the world, is working with poor, abandoned, neglected children to bring about the qualities of true natural being. Here I am working with children in Mexico, doing the same kinds of things. So in whatever your situation is, you can certainly practice the type of scientific teaching. Go to my website, find out more about how to do this, imsmontessori.org. We have some time for questions. If you have some questions, would like to present them in the chat, I believe. If you have some questions.
Yes, thank you, We do have some questions, Mr. Havis. Just give me a minute as I'm going to post them for you now. I'm just checking the question slides. So I'm going to share the questions to you on the chat screen there. If you could read it and then answer them.
I'm on the chat screen, but I don't
I
see
will
it.
read it. I will read the questions to you. How would technology change the future of the education system and approach of measuring performance, and identify how to differentiate students' learning abilities?
Well, first of all, the question is the word system. It cannot work within the system of conventional education. In other words, this is a new system of education. So certainly any situation, you could walk into a conventional classroom and you would essentially change the structure of the classroom. You would make it designed for freedom. You would observe the children. You would provide opportunities for individual activity for the children. How you measure performance is just by observing the children as they change their behavior. You know what you're aiming for is the child's true nature. So it's a little different than measuring performance from an academic test, although they will improve their performance, of course. This is what happens when you give children the freedom to explore their own interests and to work according to their own abilities. This naturally comes about. You see, as I indicated, precocious intelligence is one of the qualities of true natural being. So you measure performance by observing it, and you can certainly administer tests. I've actually created a standardized test that works very well to measure performance. I hope that answers the question. You have another one here? Shall I read it?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Slide on managing behavior was very informative. How do we bridge the gap of what is being taught in online platforms, maintaining the attentiveness and the outcome? How do we measure the learnings? It's very difficult online. I observed a 6-year-old trying to connect with other children in an online chat, and it was total disorder. Frankly, it's very difficult, getting eye contact. I can look at the screen, I can look at you, but I don't see you. And so the mutuality is a little difficult in online. So I don't, you do the best you can. And managing this behavior is very difficult because, how do you approach a child? The child walks away from the screen, what can you do? It's not a very conducive opportunity for managing this behavior. You need to have somebody there with the child to touch the child or to interact through mutual eye contact. How does Montessori approach benefit young students? Well, let's talk about scientific education. Montessori approach that follows laws of nature will benefit the student by allowing their true nature to emerge. If it's a benefit to be at peace and in harmony with other children, to be self-reliant, to be joyful, harmonious, and in order, then that's what scientific education is for, and that's certainly a benefit. That's a benefit for everybody. What is the impact on kids on their social skills because of digital learning? What is the impact on kids and their social skills? Well, any conventional teaching, and I don't think digital learning has to be completely abhorrent to laws of nature. But I have a tutoring program and we do online tutoring, but it is difficult. The impact on kids depends on the quality of digital learning. I know that there are other presentations on this conference that will talk about improving the quality of digital learning. It is a difficult context a difficult format to manage misbehavior, for example, but you do it in the different techniques that you have, getting the children to write things with screens that you can share, interacting in a friendly, supportive way, giving them things that they can do on their own without being basically told everything to do from a standardized curriculum. Scientific teaching evolved because of digital. How has scientific teaching evolved because of digitalization? Well, I think in my mind, through this conference, for example, computers are expanding the access to scientific education. In other words, in this format, I can reach out hundreds and perhaps thousands of people with this knowledge. The webinars that I do are effective. They're recorded and they can be produced and sent out widely through the internet. So this has been a great opportunity to expand communication, although it has certain limitations, but it certainly has that advantage. One more question: how much time do I have to spend in a discussion using the new system of education with my students when I'm in an online platform? Or what is the ideal time duration that should spend in a discussion when I'm in an online platform? Well, I think that sort of begs the question. The question is, what is the nature of your discussion? If your discussion is focused on the child's interests, it can go on for quite a while. But the situation will determine how long the discussion can take place. Children lose interest after a while. You can't keep focusing on the same thing that the child has already understood and wants to move on. And of course, if there are other children in the situation, you have to give attention to that also. Okay, well, thank you very much. Follow up later. I hope to be on the conference later on. Maybe we can hook up in a chat on the conference. So thank you very much for participating, and I hope we have more opportunity to continue.
Thank you so much, Mr. Havis. Any delegates who want to interact with Mr. Havis can go to the networking lounge. Mr. Havis is going to be available there for any of your questions or interactions there. Thank you, Mr. Havis. It was a wonderful session. Have a nice day.
A session full of learning was with us. Thank you so much for sharing your inputs, and I personally believe learning never stops.